Good morning, everybody. It's time for the week 10 garden tour. Let's go. Oh, someone's yelling at me. So I'm walking over to let the chickens out. We gotta let them out before we start the garden tour. You girls are already in the run this morning. Let's go. One more quick chore before we start. Let me get the girls a snack so that they're not interrupting our garden tour like they did last week. Got my dusty lid. Look at that. That's supposed to be a white lid. Alfalfa. Look, girls. Look, girls. Come on. There you go. Yummy, yummy. All right, let's go see the garden. Sunisa. Come on, come on. Out you go. Let's go. Come on, out you go. No chickens allowed. I need a no chickens allowed sign for my garden. All right, so I'm sorry if y'all noticed this about me already, but I have a tendency to over-explain things. So I'm really just gonna focus on those things that are very different from last week. Everything's grown a little bit, but if it's not producing or there's nothing really interesting going on with that plant this week, I'm just gonna skip over it. And then we're gonna go into detail on the couple things that really exploded, really caught my attention this week. And there you go. We won't have an hour-long garden tour this week. Sorry guys if that's what you wanted. So we are gonna start. Let's go. All right, so on my corn, you can see the male part of the flower of the corn. It's doing good. Starting to drop all of its little colorful thingies. And below, lower down on the stalks, we are getting the female part of this plant, and this is where the ears of corn are gonna grow. Coming around to this back garden, my Art Combs Ancient Watermelon is putting off a ton of growth this week. I'm a little disappointed because about 3 minutes ago, I caught Pip eating the end right there, the end of my ancient watermelon. I had this growing up the trellis. It was about to here on the trellis, and then Pip was able to reach her head through the bars and eat the end of it. So I caught her and moved my ancient watermelon just a little bit out of her reach, and it'll put off a new arm at the end right here, and it'll keep growing. But I thought that'd be cool to try to grow some of it on the trellis to help save space. It looks like I'm just gonna grow it until it meets the pumpkin from the other side. I really need to tie my tomatoes this week. I think I might do that later this afternoon because it is an obstacle to try to get to the back of this garden bed at this point, with my tomatoes almost growing to the back fence at this point. So I'm gonna come back and tie them up to the trellis, keep them growing up, 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 up. I'm also pulling off a ton of little suckers so that they don't take away too much energy from the plants. We're getting enough green on these tomatoes. We're getting enough height on these tomatoes. I want to see some fruit on my tomato plants. Let me show you the fruit that we do have. So at the bottom here, we have a couple of really nice big tomatoes. My big boy over here is still not ripe. I'm really waiting on him to be ripe. He's getting nice and huge. There's at least 6 tomatoes right here in this little cluster, and this one is about 5 weeks old right now. So waiting on him to ripen. Didn't know it took that long for tomatoes to ripen, but they're gonna be worth the wait. If they're anything like the little green fried tomatoes I already ate, then the ripe ones are gonna be delicious. I do have a couple of little guys starting up higher, starting to get their blue tinge from getting exposed to the sunlight. Got more down here. Now this one started growing in the fence, and I pulled it out yesterday, I think just in time. But he does have grooves on either side of him from where he got stuck growing inside the fence. So that was pretty neat. I have some more right here. And another little baby tomato. Love my little baby tomatoes. Tomatoes are doing awesome this week. We just want some ripe ones. We keep watching them, keep waiting, we'll get there. Now my bell pepper plants, take a look at this. On this back plant, I have at least 3 that are taken off. This is the albino bell pepper. On this one, I have 1 really big bell pepper. He's almost ready. He's about 3.5 inches long. We got a little one up here. And then on this plant, I saw the beginnings of a little bell pepper. So we're gonna have some bell peppers. There's another bell pepper plant right there. Haven't seen any fruit on him yet, but he is the smallest one, so maybe he's just gonna take a little longer to mature. Everybody else over here is doing pretty good. Sunflower's doing great. My nasturtiums are really nice, flowering. My basil right here, my dark opal purple basil is doing good too. Next to the bell pepper plants, I have my jalapenos, and these are waist high at this point. Like, that's my belly button. They are waist high jalapeno plants. I think that's amazing how much they've grown this week. So I have 3 of the brown jalapenos, and they're the tallest. Slightly shorter are my black Hungarian jalapenos, which had been bigger this whole season. But you know what the black Hungarian jalapenos are doing that the brown aren't? They're giving me fruit. So I've already picked a few jalapenos, and we've eaten these already. They have a nice mild flavor. They're slightly spicy with a little bit of heat, but the heat goes away pretty quick. So if you don't love the spice of jalapenos, but you love jalapeno poppers, the black Hungarian jalapeno is a great jalapeno to grow. See, when they're little and new, they start off kind of green, and as they get bigger, they turn to like an eggplant purple color. It's really neat. And this one's probably 4 days old. They grow extremely fast. This one started growing yesterday. So these jalapenos are just amazing. Look at that little one right there. So I probably have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 jalapenos on this plant, and we've already eaten 2 or 3 and little jalapeno poppers that we made. My brown jalapenos, I don't see any jalapenos yet, but they are starting to flower. They're flowering a little later than my black Hungarian, so I'm expecting fruit, but they're going to be probably a week or 2 behind on giving us some fruit. So you could see in my week 9 garden tour that I did put diatomaceous earth on my eggplants. And it's not recommended to do that on plants that you need pollinated by bugs, because diatomaceous earth will discourage bugs like bees from coming over to your flowers. And I do have some nice little flowers on my eggplant. Now the reason why I did do diatomaceous earth was because you can easily see my eggplants were just, you know, bombarded with flea beetles, and they took a huge hit. And I noticed that they were not growing very well. They were looking unhealthy. So I gave them 1 week with diatomaceous earth, and then it washed off when it rained. And once it washes off, the diatomaceous earth is deactivated. I do already see a couple flea beetles back on here. They're getting back at it. But in that week that I took off on them getting eaten up by bugs, these plants got to work. And look at this. That right there is the Listata Dagondia eggplant. Isn't it just beautiful? So this eggplant, it's white and purple striped. It's not the classic solid, really dark color like most eggplants are the color of my black Hungarian jalapenos. These Listodontias are white and purple striped. Look at that flea beetle right there crawling on my fruit. I have another little guy on my other one right here. So we're gonna have some eggplant very, very soon. Very soon. That made my day. I actually saw these yesterday. Saw this one yesterday. And I said, wow, that plant got big. You know what? I bet you it's because he didn't get eaten by the flea beetles last week. So that really excites me. Tomatillos are doing good as ever. We are getting more fruit development on my tomatillos. I was really worried for a long time I didn't see any tomatillos, and now I'm seeing a couple fruit, and I'm seeing more little fruits starting to develop. So we'll get there. We'll get there. I'm really seeing bees this week. Every morning the bees are covering my squash and my melons. So that gives me hope that maybe our bees just had a little late start, but they're getting there. So now that they're here, we're getting pollination, we're getting fruit development. My cantaloupe over here is struggling a little bit. I'm not really sure why. I think he might be getting overwatered. I think the soil that we have is a very dense clay soil, so it doesn't drain very well. So even though I only water my squash twice a week, the water's retaining quite a bit in this area. And we have a slight grade, so the water runs down. And I think Mr. Cantaloupe, Miss Cantaloupe is just a little waterlogged. My butternut squash is doing absolutely amazing. I'm seeing lots of little fruit development. And I've already have one really nice big butternut squash, and the reason that I have it with a little pantyhose, it looks really ugly, but as this grows it's gonna be extremely heavy and it's gonna pull down on this butternut squash plant. So putting it in pantyhose and tying the pantyhose to the trellis is gonna take weight and strain off the plant. I'm gonna do the same thing to this one when it gets a little bigger. We have plenty more flowers. Several of them are female, so we'll have more butternut squash, I'm hoping. Crossing my fingers. Really happy that these fruit set. Every one up to this point had just started falling off as soon as the flowers dried up. I do have some acorn squash. There's a flower. I have an acorn squash back there. We'll see if it sticks. So far, I've been getting a lot of acorn squash start to develop and then shrivel up and fall off. So I do attribute that to poor pollination. I think that now that I'm seeing the bees covering these, I'm hoping that that story is going to change for us. Then we have the chickens who just love eating on my Jardale pumpkin. This plant's been putting up a ton of growth in this corner because the chickens keep pruning him back and he's sprouting out new growth there. I want a pumpkin, so I keep looking at this plant hoping that it'll give me something good. My okra, I'm going to harvest that one in a few minutes. Have a nice little okra there. We have eaten one okra, fried it up, sliced it. It was amazing. So my consensus is that next year I need to grow more plants because getting one okra at a time is just not going to do it here for us. I love it too much. Last week on the week 9 garden tour, I showed you my black king pansy. This week it is flowering. It had a little flower bud last week. That bud is this flower. Isn't that pretty? It's kind of getting towards the end of its life. The flowers don't last too long. It's going to give us more flowers. Now the thing I've noticed was that in the pictures of black king pansies that I've seen have all been black. These black king pansies are a very beautiful, like violet color on both of my plants. So that's interesting. I love the color purple. I'm not worried about it, but that's just something to note. If you're getting the black king pansy, expecting beautiful black flowers, they're a really dark, rich purple flower. at least unless maybe I got the wrong, was given the wrong seeds in my seed packet. But I love them. I think it's gorgeous. He's attracting bees, doing a great job. And he's doing very well for living in hot western Texas in the Chihuahuan Desert, because pansies are a plant that prefer cooler climates. And he's been doing great. I mean, he's doing better than my fennel. Better than my fennel. Look there, there's a little caterpillar on my fennel. Zinnia is getting fried by the sun. Some of my other stuff is getting fried too, like my sweet peas, which is another cool weather plant. Poppy's hanging in there. Give me a poppy flower, buddy. Coming soon to a garden near you. Right after the week 9 garden tour last week, I did pick my cucamelon that was hanging on here right after I finished shooting that video. I ate it. It was very crunchy outside, very crisp, delicious. I heard going into cucamelons that they were going to taste like a cucumber with lime juice added to it. In my opinion, my cucamelon tasted like a normal cucumber. Absolutely delicious. But it wasn't limey like I was expecting. It just was another cucumber. It was absolutely delicious though. Here's the aftermath of us installing surveillance cameras. We are still cleaning up after that. Got some cameras to watch the chicken coop so we can make sure predators and unwanted visitors aren't coming in checking on our chickens. Here's another cucamelon area. These guys are doing great. Look at that. Catching some falling leaves. So my cucamelons have gone all the way to the top of the trellis, tangling up around. This one went straight to the top. They are coming off in every direction, putting off more little young cucamelons. Have quite a few on here. I'm excited because these cucamelons are tiny. I ate that other one in basically one bite and I just was left wanting more. So I've heard that cucamelons are prolific. I'm waiting to see that be the case because they really were delicious. Nice, crisp, crunchy, juicy cucumber, but tiny, like the size of a grape. So I really want more of these. What I'm gonna do if we get a bunch of these is I'm actually gonna do a quick pickle where you put them in a pickle jar that sits in the fridge and eat them that way, because I think that they would be delicious as little tiny pickles. Here's another view of that okra. I'm gonna pick him very soon. This okra developing right there, that fruit is only about 3 days old. Okra grows so fast, and all of these little buds up at the top are gonna flower, and we will probably be eating more okra by the end of the week. So it's really kind of sad because the flowers of okra are so beautiful and they only last about a day. And if they get pollinated, they turn into an okra. If they don't get pollinated, they fall to the ground. But they're delicious. Hey, Miss Myrtle. What are you doing, Myrtle? Hey. You want to be on YouTube? She says, not really. I'm gonna go find some more food. Dula wants to be on YouTube. Yeah, you do. She's checking me out because I have a new stand on my camera and it's not the one that you always try to eat. Wasn't interested in this new tripod stand, so maybe that's the trick here, getting her not to eat my camera. In the dog yard, my tomatoes are growing very tall, very bushy, and I have a few cherry tomatoes that are still not ripe yet. These are several weeks old, and I'm learning with gardening that even though I love watching things grow, I need some more patience. So gardening is giving me patience. Don't those look delicious and juicy? They're getting big. I already saw on the other side of this plant, I have another little tiny cherry tomato starting to grow. Tomatillos are doing good. My Blue Beauty sucker that I planted into the ground from pruning a tomato is growing really big. If you don't have enough tomato plants, prune a sucker, stick him in the ground, he will grow roots and he will grow into another tomato plant. On the other side of the gate, we have our nasturtiums. I have orange and I have salmon growing in this flower bed. I do see a little nasturtium fruit. It's also called poor man's pepper. Then my Art Combs ancient watermelon in this garden bed has given me a little tiny watermelon. Isn't that just gnarly? I think it is the cutest little watermelon in the entire world. It's a little lumpy, but Art Combs ancient watermelon is not gonna be judged on its looks. It's really cool. Can't wait to try him. My sunflower over here has officially dropped its flower petals, and I do see sunflower seeds starting to develop on that flower. So I'm gonna keep letting it sit there, and once those seeds look really nice and developed, I'm gonna deadhead this, maybe let it dry out for a little bit, and then we're gonna eat a little handful of tiny miniature sunflower seeds. Pumpkin over here is doing all right, still recovering from the hail, but he's putting off new growth. I have another acorn squash sitting under here. In this garden bed, my sunflowers are being ravaged by caterpillars. You can see one right there. I picked off a few and gave them to the chickens, but then I thought, I want some butterflies in my garden. So I figured this sunflower's been struggling for weeks now. So I'm just gonna see and let the caterpillars kind of eat on this plant. As long as they don't eat on the rest of my plants, they can turn into butterflies and then pollinate my flowers, after which point I might plant something else in this little pot. Beans are doing really well. They are flowering, they're growing green. They are dropping their flowers though. It's just too hot. I think they're in too sunny a location to really set a lot of fruit. I'm seeing a ton of beautiful purple flowers, and then I'll come back the next day and the flowers will just be gone. They just fall to the ground. I have my blue Serious Sage looking absolutely beautiful. Very serious. This one I am growing to put into tea. It's a really good herbal tea ingredient. I have catnip, which is starting to finally bolt. I'm nervous because we have a ton of stray cats. We actually have one cat that we can't keep out of our garage because we have a little gap under the garage. And I'm afraid that if they get in here, they're gonna eat my catnip, but they haven't yet. They mostly hang out in the chicken yard, which is one reason why we got the cameras. My peppermint balsam is looking absolutely beautiful. I'm gonna grow a lot more of this next year, and I'm gonna grow it in a more visible spot. Since this was the only plant that I started from seed this year from the peppermint balsam, and I was so excited about it, I was a little conservative, and I planted it behind the beans, thinking it's going to be protected from the shade, it's going to survive. I was afraid that if I planted it in the front garden over here, it would have died, which now that I'm looking at it, I think it would have died because this is just a barren zone of no growth. Had zero success growing anything right here. So next year though, I want to grow a lot more of these plants because they're just absolutely stunning. I think it'll also be a good pollinator if things can get to it. So far, the only things that I see pollinating this plant are ants, but you do see fruit growing, so maybe I'll save some seeds from him. You can really see the difference between the purple potted and the Kentucky green. Look at the difference in their color. Kentucky green is nice and lush and light green. Purple potted is much darker. The stems on the purple potted beans are also purple. It's pretty neat versus the Kentucky green. I wanted it to kind of be a surprise. When I originally planted my beans, I wanted to just kind of come out and be like, oh, purple beans, green beans. It's so obvious. But you know what? Since I might not even get beans on these, it's pretty cool to see that you can tell the difference. This cantaloupe is doing much better than the one in the back garden bed. It has a lot better drainage, so I think that it is utilizing the water we give it better. My Marketmore cucumber is also doing pretty good. I think the sunspots is just a side effect of where we live. It's too sunny, lots of direct sun, but they're growing, so it's gonna do what they're gonna do out here. My French breakfast radish is a monster. I want him to go to seed. He has not gone to seed yet. It is a little sun-fried, but what are you gonna do? And then finally, cilantro, which bolted. It's beautiful. Bringing in the butterflies. Keep doing your thing, cilantro. I'm not gonna eat you this year. Maybe the chickens will later. Don't tell the cilantro. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the week 10 garden tour here at Reachin Reverie. If you liked this video, then please like and subscribe, and go ahead and follow my channel. You'll see more garden videos just like this one. Hey, Pip, you stay away from my cucamelons. You stay away from that watermelon too. You hear? She does not hear. Hey, get out of here. Get out of here. Hey, Mary. Come here. Come on, girls. Let's go. The absolute opposite she does. I'm a chicken whisperer. You just gotta ignore all the times they don't listen to you and only show the times that they do, right? Mary, come. Mary, sit. Mary, don't listen to me. Eat your food. See? She listens. You guys making eggs? You're making eggs for me? Good job. We got 12 eggs yesterday with our 9 chickens. That means we didn't get all the eggs from the day before. Tisk tisk. Shame on us.
They're coming! The velociraptors are coming!
Don't make them angry. You don't want to see them angry.